One.
You're keeping that there?
Oh, we actually have these episodes where we have won it.
Oh, okay.
But
That's fine.
anyway. Anyway. Hello and welcome back to the PowerDrift podcast. I hope you enjoyed the last one. Last one we had Shameen from Rhinox. We had a very interesting podcast and he spoke about you as well. In case you're living under a rock or you don't follow motorsports, you probably not know who he is, but that's Ashish Raorane. He's been a part of the Indian motorsports scene, if I can call it that, for a really long time. And I'm here for your stories. Stories from Dakar, stories from your other races, how you got into it and stuff like that. And I'm sure a lot of people who want to venture into the world of off-road racing look up to you and want to understand what it takes to be there. But first, we're going to start by saying that this podcast is available on all audio podcasting platforms. We are also available as video on YouTube. And at the end of this podcast, we're going to get a song recommendation from you. We do this with everybody.
Right.
So song recommendation from you, one from my end, and it goes to a bigger playlist that's up on Spotify.
Got it. Interesting.
But you were there at the Ultimate Desert Challenge. How was it?
A very interesting format of racing for me. Never done before in India. And that was one of the reasons I actually signed up for it. Desert racing now kind of has taken a back seat given that we haven't had a really long event in a while. And it's getting more and more difficult to, for motorsport to exist in areas like this, which are sensitive. Jaisalmer, as you know, it's quite a sensitive area geopolitically. So it was good to see the organizers come up with a format that's sustainable. So this wasn't essentially a rally format, rather a lap race format, but still putting together like at least 100 and 150 kilometers worth of stages on day 1 and day 2. So very interesting race format, although it was really hot. Unfortunately for all us competitors, that day 1 was probably the hottest because I was there like a week before we actually went racing. And that was by far the hottest day. It was like 47 degrees. So there was an unfortunate incident where a fellow competitor actually succumbed to the heat, and that kind of made it. Organizers had to basically pull back on day 2. But overall, I think it's a very interesting format. One of the things that they tried to do, what I liked, was that they made it a little bit difficult so as to give a taste of what international standards could be. It's still not as tough as international rallies, but yeah, definitely up the game on what we generally see on the Indian motorsport scene. And I think that kind of caught a lot of people unaware. But also, it's a good stepping stone and a realization of what goes into international rally, especially desert racing. I told my team members also that if you go desert racing, if you're stupid, you better be tough. Right?
Sure.
And that's I really believe that you need to really stay ahead of the curve when you go desert racing.
You've done the Desert Storm as well.
I've done 2 iterations of the Desert Storm and 2 iterations of the India Baja in and around.
How are they different from UDC?
They're different in the sense that those are actual rallies where you have a transport stage and
So
then
time,
you have
speed,
the
distance.
stage. So yeah, there's a time. Also, they are different in the sense of what kind of motorcycles are allowed. So
Okay.
UDC opened up the sport for motocross bikes. Because if you go rally racing, you're required to have a registered motorcycle, and that brings down the number of Group A motorcycles, like the foreign Group A is generally foreign motorcycles, way down because, as you know, we can't import them. There's all sorts of legal issues with importing motorcycles. What UDC did was, because there wasn't a transport and you were allowed to put your motorcycle from your headquarters hotel straight to the stage, you could put it into a truck and take it there. That opened up the sport to a lot more. Like, I was on a motocross bike instead of being on an enduro motorcycle.
Oh.
And
you had the 350?
I had the 450.
450.
So we had 25 Group A bikes.
What?
Out of 75 total motorcycles. Yeah,
Not bad.
That's like 30% is like unheard of
Anywhere in India.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that is why I say the format was really good, and I hope that this format continues and evolves,
Yeah.
and people come more prepared and put in time throughout the year for training, instead of like couple of days before the rally.
Awesome. You are going to Dakar 2024.
That is confirmed. Yes, my entry was accepted when they usually the entries open 15th of June and 21st of July they announce.
Okay.
So I do have official confirmation from the Dakar,
And you are good to go.
and I'm good to go. I just need to find the money to pay the bills, and I'm good to go.
Dude, we're going to talk about the money because I remember you'd posted a breakdown of what it takes to get to Dakar. It was the financial breakdown, which was very interesting to see. I mean, I knew that getting to Dakar is always going to be an expensive thing, not because of travel and motorcycle and all of that, but entry fees and all of that in general. But before we get there, I want to take you back to those days where you started motorcycling. What was it? What was it like? Your first motorcycle? Do you remember your childhood on a motorcycle?
Yeah, I remember it very clearly because my first motorcycle wasn't a motorcycle really. It was a Luna.
Okay.
The first like motorized two wheels, so to say, and that's where I started. Eventually, stealing my father's. He had a very old, beaten up ESD. So he used to work in a bank, and the bank had given him this motorcycle, and he didn't use it much. He preferred to take public transport. So every time he was gone, I would kind of steal that
Sneak
thing.
on,
Yeah. So that's how motorcycling started for me. And then when I went to sea, I was a cadet. You start off with like a really small stipend, but still back then in like this is 99, a stipend of like $250 is still big money for someone coming out of college. So when I came back, I picked up a Honda Passion at the time. They launched that, and I just missed the Pulsar. Like I bought the Passion, and then the whole Pulsar definitely male thing came out, and that Pulsar
The 150.
thing, the 150 came out.
Definitely mail or something.
Yeah, that, and that was like a departure from like the normal designs. And I kind of missed that bus, and I was like, damn, I should have just waited a little longer and got the Pulsar. But nevertheless, I enjoyed this Honda Passion as well for a very long time. But eventually, then I spent a lot more time at sea. Apprenticeship was over, so I didn't get a lot of time to ride motorcycles. But eventually, after 3-4 years, I kind of had put together a good chunk of money to buy motorcycles then, and from there on, I owned a variety of motorcycles.
Take me through it.
Duke 390 was the first gen Duke 390. Then I had a Harley 48. And then I had a Harley Fat Boy Special, the Triumph 800. Then I basically realized that I didn't want to tour anymore. And so I went racing on the Triumph 800. That was, I did a INRC. I did the Raid de Himalaya on the 800.
Wow. Okay.
And then I thought that I wanted to pursue this more seriously. So I popped that off. I got a really old 2005 Yamaha WR 250. Then I moved on to a KTM 450 2014. Again, oldish, but not really that old. I still have that. And then, from there, I got more involved in the sport. So the 2014 KTM still stays with me. And the next bike I bought was the rally bike in 2019, which stays in Spain.
That's the 450. The rally spec 450.
That's the rally replica, the KTM rally replica 450.
Dude, you had a 350 also. I remember riding it.
Oh yeah, actually yes.
Yeah.
The 350 is sold now.
The wild one.
Yeah. So right now I have two Kawasaki's actually, 250 and a 450. 250 I essentially use if I go and ride some small supercross tracks, but it's also something that I use for training people, because it's manageable power. Well, manageable power.
Yeah.
It's still
Understatement.
It's still quite powerful. I mean, for a 250 to put out 44 horsepower is insane.
Yeah, man, it's crazy.
Yeah. I have the 450 as well,
Okay.
which I use.
For your big races.
The 450, yes, the KTM and the Kawasaki, I use it for big races, also for training, because I can't ride a 250 here and then expect that to translate to a 450 because the rally bikes are big
Correct.
and they are really powerful.
Correct.
So essentially, I need to be on a 450 when I'm home.
You know, when motorcycling, when you become passionate and enthusiastic about motorcycling, it's almost like a कीड़ा. You know, your the folks around you say इसको कीड़ा लगा है motorcycling का. And such is racing also, I feel. Any type of racing, because it's such a unique space to be in.
Yes.
Everybody knows that unless you become like a global superstar, the returns are very minimal. I
Yes.
mean, the investment is more, the return is not that much. So I also feel that motorsports is one such, especially in India, you need to be a little crazy in your head to go racing. And what made you say, I'm going to officially race? By the way, how old are you?
41,
41 now. So you got into racing pretty late.
35-ish. Yeah.
You got into racing at 35.
Yeah. Well, I started riding off road at 34. So yeah.
Oh, a year later you were doing. Okay. So again, it is such a, your situation is also unique. Your story is also unique, and that's what makes this podcast, or that will make this podcast very interesting, because usually when you want to get into racing, the younger you are, the better it is. Because by the time you hit your prime, especially in road racing, off-road, I mean, motocross and not motocross, but rallying, you still have people above 40
Yes.
who are racing. But it's so unique, man. You started off at 35, you're 41 right now, you've already done one Dakar, that too in the toughest category. But what made you go into racing?
So I think motorsport, like you said, in general, is generally a sport of diminishing returns. Anyways, yeah, right from the beginning.
Draining your pocket.
That's the bottom line. For us in India, again, the age thing kind of works in our favor because, like you said, any form of racing, the earlier you get in, it's better. But right now, we don't have those ecosystems to support. They are getting better, and you see younger racers now with families also realizing that this could be a career, putting that time and effort and money into the kids. For most of us, I think if my approach was never to be a professional racer, that was not what, when I set out, that was not my goal. I had very, very clear goals of where I could get, not just because of how much I could spend, but also because of the risk profile. In any form of racing, the risk profile is very high. With rally racing, it's even higher. Any form of off-road, but rally racing especially, the risk profile is really high. But the good thing with rally racing is that you hold the risk profile with you. In a closed circuit racing, sometimes your risk profile is shared with the other 20 people that are on track. But with rally racing, most of the time you hold your risk profile because you decide how fast you want to go, where you want to take it easy, where you're strong and where you can push. And I think that is why that age factor, actually the maturity that it brings in. I tell people that there's a lot of people who come to me to train now and say that, I don't want to race. And I ask them why. And generally they say that I think I'm too old for it. But that's my point, that you're not. You're mature. Right? So you have a better understanding as long as you're clear on your goals. And that is not to say that you can't get to the top of the sport anyways. But it's an uphill climb. Of course, you'll have to work really hard. If I have to go race now, like even at UDC, the people I'm competing against are half my age. Most of them, right? Most
Correct.
of them. And that is, I have to work that much harder if I have to keep pace, which is okay. I want to put in that effort. But to any common enthusiast, I would say you can still go racing. And that was a good example this time, that I had a couple of people in my team who, like one guy had started training with me just less than 6 weeks back.
Adventure motorcyclist.
Yes, right? Yeah. And to me, that achievement is much higher. Right? If you have only ridden off-road or ridden a dirt bike for 6 weeks, and then you put yourself out there in one of the toughest competitions it turned out to be, right? Riding sand. No matter the result, that's a huge achievement for me.
Got it.
So I look at it that way. So if tomorrow you said that you want to go racing, as long as you set your goals properly and understand that what is success to you,
Hmm.
not your results sheet,
Hmm.
but to you personally. If you say that out of 4 stages, if I complete 2 because I didn't have time to build my body or build endurance, if I can finish 2 stages, amazing. But you got to be realistic, and then you can say, okay, next year I will come and I want to finish all the 4 stages at a little better pace, and then you give yourself that time to build on it.
What is success to you?
I think being happy with my own result is success to me. So something I read long time ago. Success means different things to like everybody, right? But you need 2 or 3 things to be successful. You need a contrarian idea to begin with, and you need massive execution of that idea.
Okay.
This is something I read long time ago, and I think I've pretty much followed that in terms of what I do now. Because at 35 I said, okay, I want to go racing, and then I said, okay, I want to go to the Dakar. It's a very contrarian idea, like you said, but it really needed massive execution for 5 years, and I have done nothing else.
But just sacrifice and put all your focus there.
Yeah, I have done nothing else. It's people often don't see the other side of it. It's very difficult to live with me.
Okay.
Right? Because
why do you say that? Because your goal is something different. Is it because of that?
Yeah, because there's nothing else, right? It's like an all-consuming thing, and at 41, if I have to keep up with the pace and still stay current and stay fit, it requires a lot more time to be put in. Now that Dakar is 4 months away, it gets even worse. Like I'm off to bed at 9:30. I'm up at 5, and the next 4 or 5 hours is just training. And because I'm so tired from the training, it's meals, sleep, and then the days that I'm training others, that adds that extra load. So there's very little time left for anything else. Like the evenings, maybe there's so generally like something like a family activity, like watching TV together. To me, that thing is like a filler when I have dinner. Like if I have dinner for 15 minutes, that's the only time I watch TV.
Wow.
Right. And
But
otherwise,
dude, sorry to butt in, but that is actually the life of an athlete.
well,
Like-
yes and no. I think it shouldn't be. It's not for everybody to begin with, but also I think there needs to be a balance. And I think the point I'm trying to make is that the initial years, when you're trying to be successful in whatever you define that as, that balance is going to be hard to achieve. Eventually, you see that when all the athletes which are accomplished then are able to bring that balance back to their life. But
Correct.
in the initial years, it's simply not possible. It will take a toll on everything and everyone around you.
Absolutely. Do you wish you started racing earlier?
Yeah, definitely. I wish I started racing earlier, but also I think that I wouldn't have the privilege of putting in A, time, and B, money earlier. Because I progressed through my shipping career and got to a point where chief engineer, that's the highest rank you get in the engineering department. And after that, it's like a move to a shore department if you want to progress further. But that was never my aspiration. So I think the timing was quite okay because I had the time then to focus on this. I had the money to put in. And like you pointed out rightly, motorsport requires a lot of money. You can't just get up one day and say, hey,
I'm
look,
going to go racing.
I'm going to go racing. Please invest in me. No, but it doesn't work that way, right? You got to prove yourself first.
Yeah.
So the first Dakar was pretty much self-funded. Whereas now the second Dakar, I'm really happy with, the amount of support I've received from sponsors. I mean, you spoke to Rhinox also
Yeah.
just before. And
Why don't you give a shout out to your sponsors if you want to?
yes, so right now going to the Dakar, Rhinox, Rise Moto, DOS Moto, we've got the local, brands that we all know, Lazy As Bikers, Big Bad Bikes, Moto Usher, all these brands that have been a huge support. So it's taken, you know, more than a few years to actually establish me as a serious athlete, someone who's not just, uh, saying, okay, I want to go to the Dakar. There's good credentials now behind, and I see the results. So yeah, I think I wish I could have started earlier, but I think it all worked out well.
Everybody knows you as Ashish Raorane, the rider, including me. But I want to know you as Ashish Raorane in his workplace.
Okay.
Yeah, what does work look like? You're off, I think, for 3 months in a year or
Yeah,
6 months in a
so
year?
I actually, not many people know this, I actually quit my sailing job last May.
Oh, okay.
And right now, I have been focusing more on building off-piste racing.
Okay.
And because we have the Dakar year, I'm trying to balance that with my Dakar training and not taking on too much. So now I'm pretty much full-time training people. I've been doing it since last June, and there's a lot of interest. I'm happy to see that. Right now, just that this being the Dakar year, I don't have space for a lot of people and to put in like all my energy into it. So hopefully, once Dakar is done and dusted, and in February, we will set up a facility which is like a proper training facility. Because my idea, like my vision, is to make people understand that, it's not the riding. I mean, the riding has its place, and which again, UDC was eye opener for a lot of people. Like, you understand riding. There were people there who have been riding for many years, understand riding, but to actually be ready for a international event,
Race, yeah.
not just Dakar. I mean, Dakar, like, that's the pinnacle.
Correct.
But even if you want to go to a WRC round, like a world championship of rally racing, which is a 5-day event, Abu Dhabi Desert Challenge, for instance, it takes a lot of preparation. It takes a lot of thought out process of block training, what you want to train, how are you going to build that endurance. Because again, riding is riding. I think eventually the difference between successful athletes comes down to the other small nitty gritty things that, put together and make the big picture.
Correct. But what did work look like back when? For how many years were you in the sailing job?
Oh, I started when I was 18. So yeah, almost 22 years.
22 years.
And earlier on, like when you're a junior officer, the contracts are longer. It's 4 months to 5 months, depending on which company you work for. I've always worked for one company, Maersk Line. Since I started as a cadet, I was in their training program and eventually became an officer in that company.
But how did you get into this field of work?
I had people around me who were not family members who were in this sphere, but
Okay.
like I said, my father used to work in a bank, and there were a lot of people I met through my father who were in this sphere. And
Was it something that attracted you?
it was, but to be honest, I didn't entirely know what I was getting into when I applied for it.
Okay.
So I wanted to do engineering, that was for sure, and I had entries into a couple of colleges around Maharashtra based on the score and the state board results and so on. And this was also something that I had applied for. But again, to do something different than just your mechanical, electronic, or computer science engineering, I chose to do this. And to be honest, I didn't like it in the beginning. It was, and I spoke about this during the TED talk as well, that I did back in Jan, about how I wanted to quit. And that's where I think those years where I was a cadet, because there's a lot of wokeness around, ragging and how cadets are treated on board and life at sea and stuff like that. But back then there wasn't internet, so you couldn't call
Correct.
anybody. I mean, none of us actually own mobile phones, even if we had internet. Emails on board were routed through a single computer, so the captain could read your emails, and
Whoa.
so he basically essentially had to print it and give it to you.
Ah.
Right. So yeah, I mean,
No privacy.
Yeah, no privacy. So I didn't really like it in the beginning, but I think when I look back, actually, just the fact that I decided to stick to it and stay the path, kind of actually build the first seeds of resilience in me, and I think that really took me ahead also at workplace.
Hmm.
I think that was one single quality that I also spoke about, that resilience seems like, to me, that is one like, if you had to talk about all the qualities, resilience is one that everyone, not just athletes, but entrepreneurs, business people
I
just,
also feel you're very disciplined in life. I mean, we've had more than a couple of interactions, and I've always felt that even when you're there as a teacher, I think you're trying to inculcate the
yes,
the art of discipline.
yes,
I think, like you said, right, when you just spoke about UDC and how you were asking your students to be there in
yes.
the dunes at 6 a.m., and I think you're a very stern teacher that way. But I think it's great. I think discipline takes you very far in life, and it's necessary as well.
Yeah, so like I also tell people that motivation will come and go, but
Oh, that's a great line.
discipline is what keeps you going, right?
Yeah.
And that's the same for me. I mean, I'm not motivated every morning.
Hmm.
That's nobody is. Okay, if anybody says that they wake up motivated every morning, that's just, I don't believe it.
Hmm.
Because as humans, we need to understand the human side of things as well, and nobody is motivated every day. It's just impossible. We go through such a huge range of emotions, and things that have happened the previous day affect us when we wake up in the morning. We don't get proper sleep, so it's only the discipline that will, because you need to know what you have to do, and then you just do it. But also, on one thing I would say is that, although I would say you're right, I'm stern when as a coach, but I I also understand that sometimes people just need to take a break,
Hmm.
right? So my approach is not, I'm stern on things like timings. Like, I absolutely hate it when athletes don't show up on time,
Hmm.
because that's the least you can do.
What is your way of disciplining them?
I don't. Generally, it's
Do they
I.
realize it?
Yeah, I'm very good at just looking very disappointed. So,
Right.
no, but I mean, it's not like, if you're late the first time, I'm just going to say, hey, you know what, this doesn't work.
Yeah.
It's not. I think for something to be categorized as a habit, or to call someone undisciplined, it needs to be a little bit more chronic.
Hmm.
And it's easy to spot in people.
Yeah.
It's
Sure.
easy to spot people who are really giving it their all, and might have challenges that I don't know of, because despite I'm coaching people, I don't know what's happening in their personal lives.
Correct.
But it's very easy to spot people when there's an internal drive to do something. And I think, um, I see that everywhere. Like, even the training event that happened in Gurgaon, where Karan was
Hmm.
for Rise Moto, right? There were some people there who I've interacted at INRCs and all, and it's very clear to see the people who have an internal drive. They
Sure.
might not, right now, they might not have the means or the resources to get where they are, but it's clear to see that there's an internal drive to do it.
Yeah. While we are at the topic of discipline, there was a great line that I don't know who said it, because the internet keeps mixing and remixing stuff from like quotes from people, but there was a very good line, and it's a mix of two things. So it was, I think, Joe Rogan who said that you will not be motivated every day,
Yeah.
but it's discipline that takes you far. And
Yes.
the second part of the story is discipline is doing the thing that you hate, but doing it as if you love it, which is such a great quote. And I carry that form and that thought with me almost all the time.
Yeah.
But I want to get back to your job, which is what I think funded a lot of your
Yes,
racing
yes,
endeavors.
definitely.
So when you realize that, okay, I'm going to go racing and I've now gathered the funds to do it, um, did you sort of realize that it's going to drain a lot out of my pocket?
Not eventually, because I was only looking at national racing at the time, and I
Hmm.
had no idea how expensive international racing is, and that's a huge leap.
Okay. Just take me through the difference between costs in terms of national and international.
So let's say UDC 2 days,
Cool.
right? And against international FIM Baja 2 days.
Sure. I
So
also want to talk about Dakar. So
yeah,
we'll take UDC, Baja, and then Dakar.
yeah. Let's add a WRC World Championship round
Sure.
in the middle. So
Sure.
UDC national event, I would say entry fees, travel, everything done,
Hmm.
about 1 lakh.
Okay.
If you really did it
2 days.
2 days,
Okay.
right? You could do it even cheaper or a little bit more expensive, but I would say that's the median, 1 lakh rupees.
What's the return on that if you win it?
Top spot 75,000
Got it.
for this edition
Hmm.
in Moto. Now Dubai Baja is a little cheaper, but if you took like a median of Baja that happens in Europe, then you're looking at again a 2 day event. You're looking at anywhere between 5 to 7 lakh rupees.
What?
Yeah, so it's like 7 times, right?
Holy. Okay.
Abu Dhabi Desert Challenge round, which is a world championship round that I did back in March,
Hmm.
15 to 18 lakh rupees. One
Okay.
round, 5 days. And then,
Dakar.
well, that's 70 to 80 lakh rupees.
Damn. So there's a big difference between all these levels of racing.
Yes.
But it's always been rally for you. Or did
It-
you try your hand at Supercross as well?
No, I ride with the young champions.
Hmm.
I ride with Rugved, Dikshan, all these guys. But it's more to hone my skills.
Hmm.
I thought about racing in Supercross this year, but the timing was never in place. So maybe next year. I mean, to me, it's just like it's a different form of sport. It's cross training,
Hmm.
and it does help riding with young, fast kids, and that's for
Yeah.
sure. So we train together a lot for that very reason, because it kind of it's also satisfying for me that at 41, I can keep
Keeping
pace,
up with the young
Yeah.
guys. Yeah.
keep pace, and for cross training, it's really good.
Hmm.
It really haunts your skills. But as a sport, I think rally,
Is what you
rally
decided to-
Bahas, yes.
Okay. So how does the process of Dakar begin? I believe you have to take part or win certain events through the year, or you have to be a champion in your national categories or something to actually
So
participate.
not really. Dakar also has evolved in its
Entry form.
entry process criteria, especially. So back in 21, that was the COVID year, and I would say it was relatively easy. It's never easy to get into Dakar, but because it was the COVID year, instead of getting 300 400 entries, they probably had 200. So when I say easier, I mean that entry list was shorter.
Hmm.
So if you had a little lesser experience, you still had a chance of getting there. I had done and the Africa Eco Race before that, and I had run the entire Baja Championship, so that wasn't that big a problem for me. Eventually, as COVID died out, and 22 23, last to Dakar especially, everybody now who didn't go racing for a couple of years have come back, which makes that entry list really, really long and deep with a lot of experience. So Dakar has tried its best to come up with formulas that are fair to everybody. In its current form now, they expect that you do at least one WRC, which is the World Rally Championship round, or any race that has the Road to Dakar label. So all the rally championships have the Road to Dakar label,
Correct.
and Dakar used to the organization itself used to run the Mozuga Rally, but now they already have these 5.
Correct.
So you need to participate in these. Not
So
just
what are the 5?
so the-
Marzuga, Pan Africa.
No, so Abu Dhabi Desert Challenge, the Sonora, the one that's happening in Argentina now, Ruta 40. There's the Rally du Maroc in October,
That's also there. Yeah.
and there's one more that I'm forgetting. But it's not enough that you just participate in this. There are 3 categories now, FIM categories in rally racing.
Okay.
So there's the GP, which are for the factory guys
Correct.
and priority riders. There's Rally 2 for where I compete, privateers, and there's Rally 3, which is for enduro motorcycles.
Okay.
Now it is expected that you compete in the Rally 2 because you're going to be riding a rally motorcycle at the Dakar. So generally they discourage, if you want to go to the Dakar, then they would say better go with a rally bike and go in Rally 2, not on an enduro bike. If you just want to go and compete and have fun,
Yeah.
sure.
But why is that?
Why the Dakar?
Why the preference for a Rally 2 bike and not an enduro?
Because in the Dakar you will not run an enduro bike anyways. It's not possible to run an enduro motorcycle. I mean, you need a lot of modifications, but a bulk of people will be running, 99% of the field will be running the rally bike, and the rally bike is heavier than an enduro motorcycle. So they want to see that you have the capabilities of actually
Handling
that 170 kilo motorcycle in the big dunes.
Hmm.
Now, and I understand where they're coming from. Okay, the biggest pressure on the organization always is recovery. So if you have 120 competitors, right, and if they have to help 40 of them, that's a huge number to help. It puts a lot of pressure on the organization in terms of medical, choppers, rescue vehicles, sweep vehicles, and that is where they are coming from. So they expect that if we are going to run 120 motorcycles every single day, we need people who can finish in good time.
Got it.
So not only do they look at if you finished, but they look at where did you finish? What were your stage times? This is something they added last year.
Okay.
And similarly for my Abu Dhabi, when I finished Abu Dhabi Desert Challenge, ASO, which is the organization that does the Dakar,
Correct.
the sports competitor officer and David Castera himself, he was there. And once we finished, we sat and we spoke about this, that, okay, these are my results and what are my chances. And,
Okay.
and they were like, okay, it looks good. And you put in your entry in June and we'll give you the final okay.
Wow. So it's become a very strict process now.
Yes.
Which I think is good.
Rightfully so.
Yeah.
Rightfully so. And I believe that it's going to get stricter from next year because the interest has just grown so much. So many people want to race the Dakar. So they want to make it more and more tough, but they can't make it more and more tough unless they also elevate the level of riders that are going there. Otherwise, it's just a drain on the organization to keep helping people all the time.
Yeah.
Right. So I see where they're coming from.
So Saudi's locked till 2024, if I'm not wrong.
I think so, yes.
There's 2 more years and I think there will be a change in contract or whatever.
We'll find out.
Okay, so first Dakar. You've done one Dakar, first Dakar, Malle Moto, which is crazy, dude. Like to be at an event, it's the world's toughest rally. To be there in the Malle Moto category. And Malle Moto, I don't know if a lot of people know this, but Malle Moto is the toughest category.
Yes.
Because you are your own mechanic, you are your own rider, you are your own coach, your own everything. Yeah. You come back after a long day, you got to repair your motorcycle, make sure it's ready for the next day. You got to build your own tent, if I'm not wrong. You got to figure out your life basically on your own.
Essentially live out of a box.
That is absolutely mental. But I mean, I know why you probably did not get a chance in the factory team. But Malle Moto for the very first year is crazy.
Yeah, I think so. But also a couple of things. I wanted to go in the toughest category. Also being an engineer and always working on my motorcycles, I had that confidence that I could work on the bike.
Sure.
I think the current generation rally bikes are also pretty robust. Like unless you really crash the motorcycle hard, there's the regular maintenance is doable. Having said that, I still underestimated how tough it was. Definitely.
Okay.
And it's not the riding, it's not the work on the bike that drains you, but what I underestimated was the ancillary things. After 4-5 days, just like you said, pitching a tent and rolling that tent back becomes so difficult because it's cold, right? Your starts are at like 4:30 in the morning. You're up at 3 and it's like 2 degrees, 3 degrees in Saudi in the morning. Like just that whole process of, going through these small little things and you don't have a camper van that most people would have, like a motor home or a camper van where they can use the toilets. But with Malle Moto, you still need to walk a distance to go to the common toilets. So these are really small things, and they sound silly, like going to the cafeteria, and the organization knows this. So they do their best for the Malle Moto guys to have whatever small advantages they can. So the Malle Moto camp is always next to the cafeteria,
I've seen that.
right? It's
but-
always there. And these are like the small things that you don't realize in the beginning, but as you
By
know,
the eighth or
as the rally progresses, you start thinking, man, imagine if now I had to walk like half a kilometer to the cafeteria to eat.
Yeah.
So these small things start adding up. Things like, when you have to change tires, you don't have to do it yourself. You have to take it to the BF Goodrich Michelin pit, and they do it for you as long as you have a BF Goodrich or Michelin tire. It's a free service. But still, in Malle Moto, no one else is allowed to carry your tires there.
So you have to do the heavy lifting as well.
Right. So, all these small things start adding. It's like a stacking effect. And that is what I didn't anticipate.
So I was there at the Dakar in 2020, and I got to see the race, a couple of stages, very, very close, like up close and personal. In fact, I was staying inside one of the stages. So the next morning when we got up, we were having a breakfast and we could hear
all
a
the
bike
bikes,
go
yeah.
by. So it was like 300 meters from our tents, but it was just a very surreal experience. One of the things that I realized was all your factory riders start first.
Yes.
They're in the first 10, 15, 20, whatever.
Yeah.
And then you have the Malle Moto guys come in. And it's so stressful to know that at some point in time during the race, you will be overtaken by a car or an ATV or worst case, a truck. And what I saw that day when I was staying inside the stage, the amount of dust
Yes.
that these big vehicles were just throwing up, it's so easy to get lost,
Yeah.
to lose your navigation completely. And that's when I realized it's not easy to be here.
Oh, so with any rally or even like UDC, for instance, okay, that is always in general the case with off-road racing in general, that it's the slower you are, the more tougher the race is actually for you. And I say that the conditions always keep getting tougher and tougher the slower you are. So a simple thing like UDC, for instance, right? It's a lap format. I go out second. My start order, I was second. And it's 4 laps. I finish it in 22 minutes.
Okay.
I'm out and I've stopped. Now, the guy who is slow or starts late and he has that starting order because of the speed, goes out and takes close to an hour plus to do that same 4 laps.
Sure.
Comes back. Now he comes back. As soon as he comes back, let's say the last 5 riders come back, the Polarises start. The Polarises are fast, they finish. And then we have to go on the second stage again immediately,
Got it.
right? So the call for all the riders comes out at the same time. You still got to be up and about. I have rested
More, yeah.
an hour and a half, and it's exactly the same in the Dakar. So at Abu Dhabi Desert Challenge, because it's all dunes, right? The average speed is lower than at the Dakar, let's say. They're not really fast pace, but yet factory riders would finish somewhere between 1:30 in the afternoon, whereas I would finish between 2:30 to 3:30,
Okay.
which is really like very decent, reasonable for me. But there were riders who were finishing at 5:30 in the evening also,
Yeah.
right? And if you have 4 hours of less rest day after day after day, that effect really stacks.
Yeah. Have you seen people just quit?
Yes. I've seen people quit, but I have more interestingly also seen people come in at like 3-4 in the morning and start the stage at 6.
Yeah. Because I was at the bivouac. I remember we'd gone to meet, I think, Harit back in 2020. And CS was also racing back then. So 7:38 is when we reached the bivouac, because we also have to get out of the stage, go to the bivouac. It's a process. And at about 9:30 when we are heading back to our hotel, I was seeing riders still roll in.
Yes.
And all of these are Malle Moto guys because they're not going to a camper van. They're not going to a factory setup. They're going to the area where you guys pitch tents. And then they get to work. Then they have to figure out food and all of that. But it's also, it's as much as Dakar is physical, I also feel Dakar is here.
Yeah.
I mean, to do this time and over again and again and again for
See,
14 days.
Eventually, most of the rallies, it comes to recovery and how you recover. And there's a marked difference between like the factory guys and the privateers. You don't see the factory guys in the cafeterias because they have their own chef, they have their own masseuse.
I've seen that.
And it's perfect because the risk they assume is next level also.
Correct.
Right? So they have every creature comfort that's possible in the middle of nowhere, and they are that set of focusing on really, really recovery, be ready for the next stage to go all guns blazing. For most privateers, recovery, again, management of recovery is important. So people who go with teams, again, will choose teams that either have a masseuse or can give you a few more creature comforts, a better sleeping place, a colder sleeping place for, better recovery, stuff like that. Dakar as an organization also has a huge team of physiotherapists. So you can go and use that as well. Although it's limited because there are so many people going, it's limited to generally 15 to 20 minutes unless you are really suffering from something, then they help you out. So essentially, to use these services, you need time. So if you're rolling in at 8:30 every night, you're just not going to have time. You don't have time to decompress, you don't have time to eat. So over the years now, with training and so on, at Abu Dhabi Desert Challenge, for the first time, I felt really confident because I was finishing at a time that I was happy with. You have time to decompress.
Correct.
It wasn't Malle Moto, so I could come back. I could hand the motorcycle to the mechanic, tell them, okay, this is what I need. I could go out, have that really carb load, go to the cafeteria. There's a pasta station 24/7 at all these rallies, right? So the first thing you do is you come, you kit out, take a shower, and then really carb load.
Okay.
Right. So you have time for all this. With Malle Moto, I didn't have that time in the Dakar. Though in hindsight, actually, I should have still found time for this because, like I said, recovery is more important. And if I had found time for this, maybe I wouldn't have been so tired that I was by the end of it. So the speed is one thing, but
getting back on time is
getting back. And for the first Dakar, I had a very clear goal that no matter what happens, no matter how long the stage is, I do not want to come back to the bivouac after sundown. Okay, that is just, in my opinion, a recipe for disaster. That once that ball starts rolling, it's very difficult to come out of it.
Okay.
And there were 2 stages I remember distinctly, which were really, really long, and we still managed to, like, in the nick of, like, I can see the last light, and it's one of the most memorable experiences for me. I was riding with a competitor from Bahrain, Salman, and we were just chasing that sunlight because we knew the bivouac is close. We just had to get to the final checkpoint, end of stage, before that last light disappeared.
And then you road to get yeah, it's got a story.
Yeah. So I think recovery management still remains like one of the toughest things there.
Talk to me about your crash.
Yeah, that unfortunate. That was end of stage 5, 60 kilometers to go, and that was, I think, one of the toughest decisions I made. But
what went wrong?
I came over. It wasn't anything unusual. These things happen all the time. You come over a dune and you don't spot the other side, and it was just that on the other side of the dune, it wasn't soft. It was really like stone asphalt on the other side, and I crashed. I fell on my head, and as much as I tried, every time I tried to stand up, I would kind of lose vision, and so there was kind of a concussion of some sort. and a couple of people helped me. I also read it in some of the Spanish articles because there was a Spanish competitor that helped me, but I have no recollection of these things.
Okay.
And so I was airlifted, and I spent almost like 8 or 10 hours just going through CT scans and being moved essentially on a stretcher because they couldn't like unstrap me. I was airlifted out to the highway, but the choppers can't fly in the dark. So the chopper wouldn't have made it to the hospital in time. So I was transferred to an ambulance by road 3 hours into the first hospital where they ran CT scans. Then they decided to switch me to another hospital where they ran another set of CT scans. But eventually I got all clear to, well, I convinced the doctors that I was okay. There was essentially, they said that, with a concussion, you should wait 48 hours or maybe more, 72 hours.
Yeah.
But there were no signs of like disorientation or anything. So I managed to get back after missing 2 stages.
Motorsports is dangerous, and it's pretty evident in that sense. And I think I can talk to you about this topic because you've maybe seen it, been through it. But death in motorsports it's there. I mean, you
Yes.
cannot.
No.
It happens.
Yes.
What is your take on it?
It's a risk that we all know exists, but it's something that it's like you ignore it. It's there. It's one of those risks that. So I've always seen it this way, that when a motorsport death occurs, right, it's not real to you until it's someone you know. Like for me, that point was when Santosh crashed, because we spent so much time together training. Before the Dakar, we were in Spain together, we went to Dubai, and we spent that entire lead up of 2 to 3 months to the Dakar together. And I saw him airlifted in the stage. And I think that was probably the first time that risk became like very real to me. And I think that's the case where, because it happens like it happened in the previous Dakar or the Dakar before that. And you hear it and you're like, okay, we know this exists, but it's not real to you because you're not directly connected to it.
Correct. Suvil, an industry colleague of ours, passed away a week or 10 days ago. And motorsports is dangerous, but motorcycling in general is also dangerous. And I would like to believe that we might wear the best gear that is possibly out there for us. And in spite of that, if something goes wrong, then it's a different story. But like you said, you don't realize it till someone
that you're connected or know. Like
and
it's like
that
you
sort of
because it's like you keep hearing about road accidents, right?
Yeah.
But it's like you hear it. Okay, I mean it's something that happens. We know road accidents happen.
Yeah.
But unless it's someone like you're connected to, that makes it real. But at the same time, I also think that motorsport being dangerous, yes. There are, in India, I think in general, motorcycling, even in our city, probably has a higher risk profile.
100%.
Unless you're like all the gear all the time.
Dude, in spite of that, like I also feel, there's a difference between sliding off a motorcycle and impact.
Yes.
And they're two different concepts.
And we come back to the same thing where in rally racing, in general, the risk profile is in your hands.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're on the road, that risk profile is like literally like shared by 1,000 idiots around you.
Yeah, man.
Right. So that again is something to think about. So being in the shipping industry, there's so much talk about safety, right? And I have always said this, where every activity that we do has an inherent risk profile, okay? But it's the mind, like flying, for instance. Like taking a flight has a very high risk profile actually. But because we do it so much on the regular, we just don't acknowledge it, or it just doesn't register. But statistically, if you start looking at activities that you do on the regular and then you compare it to motorsport, you will find that actually motorsport comes out statistically as a much lower
Safer,
risk
yeah.
and safer sport than the things that you actually do on the regular.
Correct. I agree. But yeah, I think Suvil passing away sort of, I don't know, just changed something in me. Just the realization that I'm in the same business, and today, I mean, I can be next. And I had a very serious chat at home about this and all of that. But have you had like a chat like this?
No, not really, because I think, again, when it's your time, it's your time. I really believe that.
Yeah, I do too.
And that could be, there are a million things that can go wrong on the daily,
Yeah,
right? So we really have no control over how our lives are shaped.
yeah.
It's essentially we are living one decision to the next, not realizing that, one small step here or there could have put us on a completely different trajectory. I really believe that. So I don't think there's a reason to actually dwell on it, because if you start dwelling on that, that is what consumes you, and that is what you give power to. And then you would never be able to be in motorsport. It's not,
Right.
I don't think anyone in motorsport actually thinks that way. If you constantly think about injuries, if you constantly think about things that can go wrong,
It will go wrong.
It will go wrong, and I don't think you will ever break through that barrier of where you really ride freely. And this I've seen with a lot of athletes as well, or people who come to train, right? That there is always that one day where something switches. It's like a switch, it flips, and people just kind of become free on a motorcycle. And that is the difference. Like when you see like us guys riding on, like you have been on my track, and you see us guys riding against people who are new or hesitant, or you see that there is confidence, that we assume that that bike is going to do something sketchy, but we have confidence and we are free enough to correct it. And whereas people who are closed and have a very closed body language on a motorcycle are the ones actually that suffer. You would argue that actually they are being more careful,
Yeah, yeah.
but it doesn't always work that way.
Yeah, I've never shared this on any public platform, but I met with a very bad accident in 2016. I fractured my humerus and dislocated it, and there was like an operation. I still don't have 100% mobility on my right shoulder, but that incident put me in a shell. I don't think I've ever ridden freely after that. It's more here.
Yeah.
I mean, I ride fast. I've competed in like media classes, and
yes.
won and stuff like that. But still, at the back of my head, there's still this thing of something's going to go wrong. And I've never ridden free. And I don't think I'll ever ride free until I want to ride free. I think it's more on me than anybody else.
Yeah, I think it's very important to come out of that quickly. So recently, I don't know if you saw it recently, before UDC, I think when it was really raining heavy here, 3 or 4 weeks back, I had posted a small clip where I crashed over the handlebar. And
Okay, I don't think.
and it was like, the bike went down, it went into a tank slapper, it went down, and the handlebar actually hit me here.
Okay.
Okay. And it was like, going from speed to dead stop. And despite everything I'm wearing, it found that one spot which is open, right? And 2 centimeters here, it would have been really something
bad,
really
yeah.
bad, because it hit me like really hard. Okay.
Okay.
It was so bad that for the next 2 days, I couldn't like swallow.
Shit.
Right? This whole thing was bruised and it was swollen. But I had that crash. I was just sitting there, like people, it was on the track. So like, everybody came around and I just told them, just, leave me
me be,
alone
yeah.
for like, let me, just don't touch me. And I got up when that pain subsided. I parked my bike. I put a 15-minute timer, and then I went out again because I didn't want to stop there.
Got it.
I went out, I did another 20-minute moto, and then I put my bike in the van and I came back home.
Yeah. But it's also like you said, I mean, athletes are wired differently. But I also feel athletes or just people in general need to understand and respect the boundary. Of course, there are some people who will go beyond and try to push it and push it and push it and push it. Not just in the world of athletics, but I also feel in general life, whatever you do, there needs to be a line,
Yes.
and you need to identify it.
I also like, there's so much of this whole hustle culture thrown at us now, and I don't believe in hustle culture. There's a difference between hustle and working hard. And again, if you talk about training as well, right? Like you said, there needs to be a boundary of where you understand that discipline is one thing, but understanding that if you are really tired from something, if you had long travel or circumstances out of your hands, and you haven't slept enough or recovered enough, the next morning when you go to that gym, that adaptation is not going to happen. It is wiser to rest, come back at a time when that body can actually adapt.
I also feel you realize it more the more mature you become.
Yes.
That understanding comes quickly,
Yeah.
because when I was in my 20s, I was reckless. Like I would, hurt myself in a football match, and the next day I would still be pumping iron. Then I would go play football again. Little crazy back then, but now I think that realization is
Yes.
because the older you get, the difficult it is for the body to recover.
And also, I think sports science now has advanced so much.
Evolved, yeah.
It's evolved. There are multiple studies. It's just that we need to look at the right stuff, because the downside of all this is that everything is available on the internet, right? So
But it's the right kind of information.
yeah, it's the right information to identify the right studies. And so I have spent like the last year and a half, I have, because I quit my job and I want to get into coaching and training full time, I have spent my time upskilling. I have done nutrition courses. I have done courses for mental training for athletes, programming, how to program, physical training,
Right.
block training. How do you plan a year? How do you plan 2 years? A races, B races. And I've learned this over time now also. And that is what I say, that there's so much information, but it's to identify the correct one. You can have, like, for every single thing that you want to research, there are contrary studies available.
Yeah, man.
Right? But it kind of, to understand, like, what is the study group, where was it done, does it even apply to us as Indians from a
Correct.
geographical placement
Perspective, yeah.
perspective, whether, because if a study proved something really well in Sweden,
Yeah.
does not apply to our athletes.
I want to insert, like, have an insert here about a topic, but then it'll go into some next conversation about diet and all of that. But I know what you're trying to say.
Right? So there's a whole lot of things that an athlete needs around. And I think over the years, it has also been a learning process for me. I have not had, like, let's say, coaches. A lot of it has been self-learned, trial and error. And that is also why last year I spent a lot of time actually studying things, doing all these courses. So there's a educational foundation to what I'm teaching.
Yeah. Oh, what's the story of your tattoos?
There's really no story. I just like tattoos.
That was a short one. But okay, tattoos is pretty much out of the way.
Yeah, some might argue, like,
Is there a meaning to it?
Makes you go fast.
Yeah.
Probably doesn't.
Okay, what does diet look like?
It varies through the year, in season, out season. I'm a foodie. I love to eat.
Please tell me you have sugar and you indulge once in a while.
I indulge more. So for me, it's like I'm a sugar fiend, actually.
Okay.
Right? So I can't, if you tell me eat sugar in moderation, I can't do it.
Okay.
Right? So it's either on off for me.
Okay.
So it's something that is not sustainable for anybody, no matter how disciplined you are. So for me, it's more like, if I'm injured, if I'm really off season, that is the time when I indulge myself, because I feel that everybody needs that mental time off. And over time, I've also tried to bring in, like, a bigger balance. Having said that, it is very clear that sugar actually is one of the worst things you can put into your body. There's no two ways about it. There's enough research, like, comparable to alcohol or smoking or what you have, right? It's just that it's a drug that's available to you freely and in every single form.
Sure.
But yeah, like I said, I am a sugar fiend. So, but I try to find ways, like even now when it's in season and hard training, I try to find ways where I can have healthy forms of sugar, because I like to have something sweet.
What is a healthy form of sugar according to you?
So you make something at home. You can make like ice creams out of whey protein, and so there are multiple things that if you Google like healthy desserts,
You'll get
there's
it all.
there's a multiple like huge list. And even there are companies now that invest into selling stuff that is healthy. I have like ice creams that can't remember off the top of my head, but there's ice cream that I get away or something.
Getaway. Yeah.
Right.
Getaway. It's called Getaway.
I mean, 75 calories. It's got stevia, very little sugar. In general, like now that I've done all these nutrition courses and all, more than sugar, there are also foods that are not that high in sugar but have like what you call a glycemic index. And,
Very high in glycemic index.
and they pump your insulin in
Really?
insulin really high.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of things to consider, but I think this is coming down to the micro part of dieting. I think for a general, like your average motorcyclist, weekend rider, or even weekend racer, I would hazard that most people, athletes wise, yeah, if they put in a lot of effort in exercising and their craft, actually they are still under eating.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Under
Do you have
eating.
a set amount of calories that you end up? Is it weighed and accounted for?
Yes.
Okay.
So I use MyFitnessPal, which is quite easy to track.
Sure.
Tracking is not for everybody. I think it's good. Like if you wanted to track calories, it's good to do it for a couple of months so you understand portions. So tomorrow when you go out and eat, when something is put in front of you, you kind of ballpark know that, okay, this is like 200, 400, 800 calories, whatever. And I think once that education is done, there's no need to calorie track for it's not for everybody.
Got it.
Unless you're really into specific like sport, like now with the 4 months to Dakar, I really want to make sure that this amount of protein goes in,
Every day.
these amount of calories. Basically, I don't want to be undernutritioned. Otherwise, there's no adaptation to everything that I'm doing. So it's a waste of effort.
Right.
So I look at it more on those terms, because if you burn 600 to 800 calories every day just in exercising, chances are that you won't be actually able to eat that much. It's difficult to eat 2,000-3,000 calories every day. So for me, it's the other way.
That's what I've realized in the past 3 months. I've sort of fallen in love with running, and I still play football and all of that. But I realize my intake is not,
Yes.
there is no measure to it, and I'm losing weight, and I'm probably also losing muscle mass, which is not healthy, I feel, which is a bit of a problem. How much do you weigh right now?
62.5.
Will you go down for competition weight or something? Is it like that?
62 is my target. I've always stayed plus minus 162. So for UDC, I put on 1.5.
Okay. But is there like an off season where you gain an incredible
not
amount of
really.
weight?
I've generally stayed within.
But do you think this is adequate for you? Like you feel the best at 62?
Yeah, I mean, if I could put on more muscle mass, I wouldn't. For me, the weight is not really an indicator of anything.
Okay.
I always tell people that weight is not an indicator of anything. Yeah? I mean, 70 kgs can look fat or 70 kgs can look really pumped.
Yeah.
So weight is technically not a measure of anything actually. And people generally tend to obsess over weight a lot. Rather than that, they need to figure out body composition. What is that weight made of?
Correct.
So instead of having like a normal scale at home, you can buy the body composition scale. And even if your weight is increasing, but your fat is decreasing and your muscle mass is increasing, actually you're on the right path. So the weight doesn't really matter.
Got it. Okay, so 4 months to Dakar. What is left in terms of preparation?
Preparation is like through the year anyways, right? And now I'll ramp up. It will become more sport specific for the last 3-month block. Now, essentially what's left is paying the bills.
Got it. And is that a hurdle right now?
Not a major hurdle. We are there pretty much, I would say 80% we are there. The last 20% is work in progress. It's just this time I'm not going Malle Moto, so there's that added expense. So if you hire
But
a
you're
service
still a
team,
privateer.
I'm still a privateer.
Okay. But you will have a mechanic. What's different?
So I will hire a race team, to put it simply, I will hire a race team that will service my bike at the end of the day. If I want to sleep in a motorhome, I'll have to pay more. If I want a physiotherapist, I'll have to pay more. Essentially, it's add-on. It's like you go to a shop and
Correct.
add-ons.
So what is the name of the team?
X-Raids Experience.
X-Rays Experience.
They are the same team that I went to in Abu Dhabi Desert Challenge,
Okay.
and they are a Spanish team. Been in the business for very long. I'm running my own motorcycle. So
The 450.
the 450.
It's a KTM.
It's a KTM 450 rally replica. It's my own motorcycle. So yeah, it's two ways to look at it. Like if you rent a motorcycle, it costs 20,000 euros. If you buy one, it costs you 35,000 euros.
Okay.
But then that motorcycle
35,000
Yes,
euros.
including
But it's
tax.
ready to race types.
it's ready to race. You need navigation equipment and so on. Then another 1,000 euros on top.
Damn.
Navigation equipment, cables, and your safety equipment, all those
Right.
buttons and remotes and everything.
Racing is expensive,
Yeah.
man.
So to hire a service team costs somewhere like around 20,000 euros. If you want to rent a motorcycle, 20,000 euros. If you own one, these motorcycles hold their value really well.
Hmm.
So you can always sell it later. So I look at it that way. So if you have the money, and
It's a
that is
good investment then.
it is, and the motorcycle will last you at least 2 to 3 years. You can do engine change or engine rebuild, and you can use it for the next race.
Okay.
So long term, that makes sense.
Sure.
But essentially, you have the service team there. They will service your motorcycle, and if you want to sleep inside a motorhome,
You can do that.
you
too.
can do that. Just a little bit more money.
So you take it one Dakar. I mean, you take it year by year, or do you have like a 3-year plan? How long do you want to do this for?
Well, firstly, now that I'm not going in Malle Moto this year, I want to have a good finish, and I want to ride more freely, because with Malle Moto you always have that thing in the back of your head that if you take too many risks and crash, you got to go and fix that motorcycle, and that is why I went to Abu Dhabi with the race team, because then
And you felt the difference.
I definitely felt the difference. I was riding more confidently, more freely, and I saw it in the timings as well. So one step at a time, I want to get to the finish line with a good result in 24, and I want to rally as long as possible. It's again, like you said earlier, right? You see the general age group, though it has reduced over the years, the general age group in rallying is 40 above. There are a lot of people there,
Sure.
and I think physically I could do this for some time to come,
Some more years. Okay.
because after 45 you have the veteran class, and in 4 years I'll be in veteran class, and that opens up another
Chapter.
So definitely it's a long-term plan.
100%, man. I think I would love to have you again for more stories from Dakar and your racing career, and I would love to do that. But for now, thank you
Definitely.
so much for being here. I think not just me, but the entire team of PowerDrift, for people who are watching this video and people who are watching this video, I would wish you all the very best for Dakar. I would love to catch up with you. I don't know if you will have the time to get on a podcast again before the Dakar really kicks off, but we'll try
Surely,
making it happen. I think closer to the Dakar.
Closer to the Dakar makes sense.
Absolutely.
Yes, for sure.
It's time for your song recommendation.
All right.
I'll have to look at this. Sure. I've got my song. What do you have?
So I'm a big Tupac fan.
Okay.
Any of the Tupacs, but if I had to name one, Changes.
Changes. Okay, Changes by Tupac. I'm going to say
Yes.
Affirmative Action by Nas.
All right.
So these songs will, again, like I said, will go to a big playlist that is up on Spotify. So that is Ashish's recommendation. That was my recommendation. Do listen to the entire podcast, because we have a lot of songs from a previous podcast episode as well. If you want to ask Ashish anything, please drop those questions in the comment section. You can also reach out to him on Instagram at @Ashish Raorane.
Ashish_Raorane.
Ashish_Raorane, and you can, if he has the time, I'm sure he'll reply, but most likely he'll be training for Dakar 2024. But thank you so much for being here, dude.
No
It was really a pleasure talking to you, like always.
Always. Yeah, always a
And
pleasure.
any final message?
Well,
Full gas.
I think so. Again, coming back to UDC,
Yeah.
There were a lot of people who had a lot of questions about getting into international racing. And like I said, please feel free to drop any messages on Instagram, or get in touch with me, because I think there is a huge potential to get into international rally racing with the right guidance and just finding the right steps. So yeah, any budding racers there, even though you might be like a weekend warrior for now, I think it's possible for anyone. That's the beauty of rally racing.
Superb. On that note and that beautiful message, thank you so much for listening and watching, listening to this on other audio podcasting platforms and watching this on YouTube. If you want to see more guests, drop in your comment. If you want us to talk about another topic, drop in those comments as well. Like this, share it with your friends who are interested in Dakar, Ashish Raorane, and the world of rallying in general. Thank you once again. My name is Varun Painter, and I will see you later.